Welcome, it's Dashi Miller, and we're here with another of our Warrior Concepts, Warrior Whiteboard Wednesdays. And today we're going to take a look at something probably boring, right? But it's usually the boring things that are the most important because, well, they make the exciting stuff possible. Anyway, all right, so got my little drawings here going. I didn't want to have to take up extra time doing these things. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the legs today. We're going to take a look at the legs from two different perspectives, one in balance and one in balance breaking, right? In our Ninpo-Taijutsu, right? Opposite a lot of fight systems, right? A lot of fight systems, they fight from up here, right? The feet do things, right? But it's different, right? We're in there with a lot of like Tai Chi and other Kung Fu systems and whatnot, where the power comes from the ground up as opposed from the top down, right? So we're going to take a look at these, and I'll use these a bunch of different ways, leave some blank space just in case I needed to write something else. Again, my great drawing, right? So anyway, I know this one looks a little odd up here. We'll zoom in when the time comes. But what I have is a top down, a front on, could be back as well, and then a side on perspective. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at things from the omote and the ura side of balance, right? So omote, from the frontal, obvious kind of thing is, what should we be doing to make sure that we maintain balance and we're in a strong posture, okay? Regardless of whether the knees are bent or the legs are, whatever, right? And then if we understand that, then balance breaking should be as simple as doing the opposite, right? Or causing the opposite to happen for your attacker, for your assailant, right? So again, there's lots of ways to do balance breaking. What we're doing, again, today we're focusing on the legs, okay? So this is going to be important for everything from health to walking, obviously for our martial art and self-protection. And before I hear anybody say walking, well, duh, everybody can walk, right? Well, if they could walk correctly, then stores here in the West, at least, right, would not be loaded with shoes with arch supports, right? Most common problem that I see in my students, and something that I had to make sure that I didn't allow to happen along the way, was in this, not just fallen arches, because fallen arches happen over time, right? But what they are a result of is people, instead of walking on the edges of the foot, right? Just like the palm, right? The foot is laid out the same way. We just have nubbier little digits on the end of it, right? But we got this little, shape, right? This little, almost like kidney bean shape kind of thing, right? This way, give or take, right? And then you got the digits sticking off here, right? So we've got this divot, right? It's important if we're going to be doing things like tracking, right? Unless the guy has fallen arches, in which case, well, that's not going to help as much, right? Women's, sometimes, some guys, right? Depends on the frame, but generally speaking, women have a deeper indent, right, on the arches than men do. But either way, what ends up happening over time with really crappy posture is that this area right here starts to touch the ground, okay? So the raised part of the foot ends up down here. So we're going to talk about and take a look at what that does for us and how, if we don't fix it, right, we're going to plateau or hit a wall in our taijutsu, right, and our ability to move freely, not because we don't understand what the grandmaster is doing, not because we don't understand what the teacher is doing, but because our body literally won't be able to do the movement that's necessary. Okay. All right. Again, this is a big picture kind of thing, right? I announced this way back when we started this whole Whiteboard Wednesday. This is the big, blimp or hot air balloon or whatever over the stadium, big picture view kind of thing to give you a head start. If you're actually in training, like in our program, we hammer walking a lot, right? I mean, we don't hammer people's walking. You get the idea, right? Anyway, but we go into it a lot, and there's constant reminders. There's drills, there's walking exercises, all that different stuff, right? But again, for this one, I'm going to jump around and hit big picture kind of things, right? So anyway, later on, when we do some editing down the line or whatever, we'll pop little zooms on this thing and all that. But at the moment, it's just me and a laptop camera, and here we are, right? So anyway, first thing we want to take a look at with balance is that big picture, full body, right? There's this alignment. There's this ideal alignment that we should be finding. We should be looking for and finding, right? And I'll do it using my side-on guy here, and hopefully I can erase without screwing things up too badly. But what we're looking at, maybe I should have put this thing on here, right? I trained originally to do art and all that kind of stuff, so hopefully I know where an ear goes. But anyway, right? The rule of thumb is ears over shoulder, shoulders over hip, hips over feet, okay? But sensei, what about the knees, right? The knees right there. Well, the knees right there now, right? In Shizen, normal standing, all that kind of stuff, right? But if we're in Ichimonji, if we're in some Kamae, right, the knee's going to be in a different place, right? The knee's a variable. What we want to maintain is this, what carpenters might say, a plumb line, right? And not the fruit, right? So it's this straight line, right? If we don't have this, if the posture is broken, what we end up with is like a pelvic tilt, those kind of things where things are out and then the body is like cooking off a whole bunch of energy trying to keep you from falling over, right? I remember when I was in the military, and a lot of people credit my walking and my posture and all that to military service, but that's not where I learned it, right? I learned it in this martial art. I was just lucky enough to have the teachers that were pointing things out more than just punching, blocking, and kicking, or teaching funky Japanese name techniques, right? So, but anyway, I was at one point stationed in what was then West Germany, right, with the U.S. Army, and I had an opportunity to take my family on a little tour, right, up and down the Rhine River in Germany, and there are all these castles along the side because in old days, right, they used to like volley at each other across the river, right? So anyway, as a part of the tour, we stopped at one of these places, right? And so the cool thing, the little side note, right, as we're touring through, there was a suit of Japanese armor on display in this castle. And it was my first experience with Japanese armor and being confused as to why the emperor or shogun or whoever, gave the baron of this castle this suit of armor. Why would give him a suit of armor that was like for a child, right? And it wasn't until I did some more historical research that I realized that, average height of a Japanese warrior during the Sengoku Jidai Warring States period, when our stuff was put together, right, was 4 feet 2 inches, right? So, what, medium-sized child, maybe, right? So that puts things into a really weird context when you start looking at, the fact that average size Westerners, keep clipping the ground with a 6-foot staff or have a problem with a 7-9 foot spear or whatever. And that stuff was all developed by people, again, average, give or take, 4 feet, right? Tall, right? A little over a meter, right? For those of you in the metric system. So anyway, here's a suit of armor, right? And wow, I hand the camera to my wife and I go, I got to get a picture with this, right? So I do my best, stand up, stand tall, stand straight, right? Get this picture. Now, this is pre-digital pictures because we're talking mid-'80s, right? So film has to get developed. I get these pictures back and I'm looking through and I get to this picture. And again, this is one of those things that we have to look into, which is why it's important to not just do mirror work or whatever, but to also like set up. You guys have such a benefit these days, right? You set up your freaking camera, your phone, you hit record and you do some movements in front of it. And then you go back and you look at it because what you're going to be looking at is what the teacher can see, what others can see, not what our brain thinks it's making the body do. And here was one of those, we could call it cognitive dissonance, right? Where what we think is going on or what we're attempting to do is nothing like what's being produced, okay? So remember, getting this picture, I'm standing tall, right? Because I'm next to like Japanese armor, right? And I get this picture back and I've got this huge bow in my back, right? And my head is jutting way forward, which is what the head does to neutralize a pelvic tilt. Where the hell did pelvic tilt come from? Because I was in the Army then, so I didn't have, Buddhahood going on, right? And so where the hell did that come from? Well, the sit-ups of the day weren't really working on the abdominal wall. They were working on the iliopsoas muscle, right? Or the psoas muscle that connects at the front of your spine, the spinal column, right? This big butterfly shaped kind of thing. Almost looks like one of those, there's a certain type of Japanese fan, right? But it attaches to the front of the spinal column, right? And then goes down. There's these little extensions, right, that go down through the iliac crest at the front of your pelvis and connect at the inside of your thigh, right? So the psoas is in here, and then these tentacles come down and attach at the inside of the thigh, right? And once I started doing that study, then I realized that when we were all doing sit-ups, right, that explained why when we got up, certain parts of our thighs hurt, not so much the stomach muscles. Okay? Because the abs were working a little bit, but they burn out fairly quickly. It's this psoas muscle that's responsible for bending us in half, that kind of thing, right? Very, very different, right? So these sit-ups and not actually working crunches, right, which works the abdominal wall, what was happening was those things were making that psoas muscle very, very tight, right? And it was compressing things, right? And because we weren't working on lower abdominal muscles, right? Ones in front of your pelvic, your pelvic or your pelvis, right? Above your junk, right? Those muscles, then there was no opposite kind of contrasting tension to keep things straight, right? And then, like, if that's bowing, right, you're going to fall backwards. So what the body naturally does is extend other things forward to neutralize that, right? So over part of a lifetime, all these adjustments were being made, feet were changing, all that kind of stuff, because the body was trying to not fall down, right? So part of training, believe it or not, is not about kata. It's not about rolling or skills or whatever. It's about getting the machine, the structure, to be correct, right? Because what we're trying to do with posture and getting it correct is to align things so that the body neutralizes the force of gravity on our body, right? And we can't do anything about the downward pull, but if you can stack everything like those little kids blocks, right, that go on top of each other, if you can get those right, then gravity's pulling down through the whole unit and not pulling one in one direction, right? And then something else has to go in another direction, and that kind of thing, right? So this is a full body kind of thing. And I know I've covered this in other lessons, but we need to start here, okay? So macrocosm, right? The big picture for balance for us is ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over feet. Okay? If you get that piece, you'll understand why Kukishinden Taijutsu stuff works the way it does and how things are torqued and rotated to lock up the body. There's a locking up the structure, but also then it's fighting gravity, right? And then there's a specific angle that we strike or cut through to break the structure, right? To break everything down, right? But this is the macrocosm. This is the big picture kind of thing, right? Ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over feet. The knees are variable. They're in there, right? As long as they're not doing weird lateral stuff because there's no, cartilage and connective tissue, we're all good. And if there is that kind of lateral movement, then wear braces, okay? I don't care how unmanly it seems to be, or, you're 50 going, wishing you were still 23 or whatever, right? Get it right. Okay. So the macrocosm, the big picture, right? So overall balance breaking later on, and we've done some of these things as well, right? We look at the upper body, right? Today, I just want to look at the lower body, okay? 90% of our taijutsu comes from the hips down, and 70% of our taijutsu comes from the knees down, okay? 90% from the hips down, 70% from the knees down. That's not my discovery, well, it's a rediscovery, I guess, right? That's from master teachers in Japan for decades. Okay. All right. So this is full body, right? What about the legs, right? Then we're only having to worry about hips and feet. No, we're going to bring the knees back in. Okay. Because when we go down to a microcosm, right, and we're only looking at the legs, right? Well, what's really important here is the relationship between the three joints in the legs. Okay. So we've got the hips, we've got the knees, and we've had the ankles, right? With correct posture, there is an alignment, a correct alignment from here to here and from here to here. That's really, really, really important. Okay. What allows us to stand as a human being is that alignment. So if our posture is bad, the body's still working it, right? But we could be exhausted at the end of the day, but we didn't really do anything, right? We weren't in like, the modern ninja warrior chat going on. Then there's this leg thing going on. Hold on 1 second. I just got a weird warning on my computer here, and I want to make sure that we still have. All right, so I guess we still have internet. Hopefully there wasn't too big of a glitch in there, right? So if it's not the back, right? If it's not this, rolled in shoulders from poor posture that's being caused, typically by like it's a resulting kind of thing of somebody being closed in. So they're defensive, could be low self-esteem, could be, working at a desk job all the time. So everything's kind of folded in. So all the weight starts to move toward the front of the body, right? Or they do a lot of reading, or they're looking at a computer screen that's not positioned for good posture, right? So then this kind of thing starts to happen. And when this 7-ish pound bowling ball, right, shifts off of center, the back has to fire big time to neutralize gravity that's going to make you fall on your face, right? So, but if it's not that, right, then it's this relationship. So butt muscles could be firing, thigh muscles, right? The biggest things we have, right, could be firing all day long to maintain that alignment, right? If we're constantly getting cramps or the leg muscles are stiff or sore or whatever, right? This could even result and go up the spinal column and cause headaches and all kinds of things, right? Right. So, but anyway, right, what keeps us standing as a human being, right, because we're bipeds, right? What that means is we only have 2 points of contact with the ground, okay? We're not a 3-legged stool. We're not a 4-legged stool. We're not a 4-legged animal, right? Which means we're in a constant state of shifting balance. So the more we can neutralize, and balance comes just at its very core, is about neutralizing the force of gravity on our body. If we can get gravity to pull 90 degrees through our body to the ground surface, right? Ground, us, right? If we can get it to pull that way, then we don't have to work as hard to stand up. But if more things are off, right? Got the big old Twinkie badunkadunk kind of thing going on, or, maybe we need a reduction up. Well, most of the guys most of the people that are on this program and in my programs are men. This is not anything against women. It's just we have, 6%, 7%, okay? Maybe my hair's not long enough and I don't have earrings. Who knows? Anyway, so there's this natural alignment, okay? So we want to know what that is, and we want to make sure that it's correct, okay? So let's go back to that fallen arches or not being correct on the feet, okay? So the way the foot kind of makes contact with the ground is we have the outside edge, right? And if the foot if the posture is right and the foot is strong and the alignment is right, one of the indicators of bad posture is the pinky toe no longer touches the floor, right? People just write it off. My pinky toe doesn't touch the floor. It's just natural for me, okay? No, your body has grown that way, right? Because of other things that you're doing. So it's no longer needed to make contact with the ground, right? If we're correct and that arch is strong, then that touches the floor, right? All the toes touch the floor, arch is up off the floor, right? We'll get the extra toe out of here, right? Right? So it's up off the floor. But if we're this way, okay, and that goes for a complete fallen arch or just without arch supports, I can't, whatever, right? I've heard it all, right? So if this is happening and it's down, this is not independent, right? I don't know how many people are still getting the songs with the teachers and the parents and all that in preschool and kindergarten, right? Foot bones connected to you get the idea, right? Okay. So if this isn't arch shaped, right? I'm cutting through the toes and the ball of the foot here, right? If that's not there and it's flat to the ground, this has happened. That's happened. And I know that's an exaggeration, right? I'll bring it closer if you need to see it, because I don't have Zoom capability at the moment, right? It's pretty funky looking, right? Okay. So over time, knees are hurting, hips are hurting, all without arthritis, right? So what we end up with is this broken alignment. It's not broken, but the alignment is broken, okay? And then everything else becomes a struggle. When you see people in their older age, right, and they've got this big old hump in the back kind of thing going on, where you look at the legs, right, and they've got this kind of hobble kind of thing going on and whatnot. That's from years of walking on misaligned things, right, and the resulting kind of action or the resulting karma, right, that gets created in the body, right? So anyway, so macrocosm, right, ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over feet. Microcosm, the thing we really want to take a look at is to make sure that we have defined arches. If we don't, you're going to have to do the best you can with what you have, because it's already at that point where you're going to have to adjust, right? Unless you get somebody to rebuild your feet for you. Okay? At this point in my training career, and I'm not a doctor, I don't know what exercises to give you or whatever that will cause the arch to maybe start to recreate, but maybe you could look that up. Right. So microcosm, hips, knees, right, ankles. There's a natural alignment, okay, that allows us to remain standing as a human being. So that must mean that if these things are out of alignment, then we're fighting gravity, right? And we're doing things that make up for natural alignment and easy free movement, but it's kind of it's a house of cards, right? So the techniques we have in the art are designed to affect the natural alignment. If the opponent or us comes to the fight with stuff already misaligned, it's like being an accomplice to your own ass kicking, right? You came to the fight with things that he can use. It makes his throws easier. It makes his kazushi balance breaking easier, all that kind of stuff, right? Even if he doesn't know the science of it, okay? It makes his task easier because we came in as a cripple. And I don't care how not PC that word is. That's what we've done. We've crippled ourselves. We've handicapped ourselves, okay? So it's in our best interest to make sure that these things are right and we don't end up with one of these things, okay? So hips, knees, and ankles. We're going to go into this much more deeply this Friday coming up during our Friday virtual class, where all the techniques that we're going to be doing are about attacking the legs, right? They're going to be leg attacks, right? So if you can get on that, that'd be great. For those of you who have been jumping on the Friday virtual training, you've been asking for it, and so we listened, and it's already there. So on the URL right here, right there where that break is between .com and Friday, right, that / kind of thing, right? If you replace Friday virtual class with this Ninpo master class, right, you'll go to the information page for this program that we put together, where you can get on 8 or 9 live training classes per month, plus recordings and all that, right? Plus we threw in an extra $1,300 worth of additional training if you jump into that kind of thing. But either way, right? So hips, knees, and ankles, right? So the whole idea, if you start looking at techniques, right? The primary long staff technique, right? Kihon, in the Kukushinoryu, right? Ashi barai. Ashi barai means leg sweep, okay? But what is it that we're doing? I mean, we're obviously hitting something low on the leg, right? So if anybody's hitting high on the leg and not getting the same response or getting a different kind of response, there's a reason for that, right? If you go from the just above the knee up or the knee up, what ends up happening is when you strike this area, the leg does that, but in this direction, right? So the leg will bend this way and he'll sink this way, right? But the legs are in a different place, right? On Ashibarai, we're coming in from mid-calf to ankle bone, give or take, right? And when we strike those, because of the pain and the physics on the leg ends up flying out here. They still sink, but instead of buckling and kind of getting jammed in place, what ends up happening is you're blasting the leg away, right? So I know it's leg sweep, but what we're doing is hitting it in a way that the legs open up, right? Then you come up with a hanayage or whatever, right? So, but there's lots of ways to do this where we're compromising their balance or we're locking them down and making it damn near impossible for them to move freely, right? So again, if the natural alignment, right, what allows us to stand as a human being is that alignment between the ankle, the knee, and the hip, both sides. So we got 6 pieces to play around with, okay? 2 of each on each side, right? Okay. If we misalign them, right, if the knee moves out of alignment from the hip, right, outside, inside, right, I know you can't see my legs, but you can see what's happening up here, right, okay, that's one way to misalign it, right? If the knee to ankle moves out of alignment, right, so the knee is moving it away, so the hip's not being affected all that much, but the foot and knee are being moved lower, right? You get a different kind of thing, right? So this is knee hip. This is knee hip. Okay. This is, I don't want you to look at the leg. I want you to look up here, right? Because when you do things in a fight, this is the part of him you can see. Okay. If you look down at his legs, you're getting punched in the face. Okay. So if I throw the knee ankle out of alignment, I get something different. Okay. So the knee can be manipulated side, obviously. Now, again, to understand these joints, we need to understand what kind of mechanism is in operation, right? You don't have to be like an engineer or anything, right? But if you understand the nature of the joint, right? I tell all my students, if you don't have a good anatomy book, Gray's Anatomy, you don't have to walk around with like one of these big old giant things, right? Something like that. Where's my other one? This was a gift from one of my students years ago. He was in medical school. So I got his anatomy class book, right? These are all cadaver pictures, right? Cool stuff, right? I think. I've had students pass out when I open that up because they're sensitive. But to understand how it works and the nature of it, then we understand range of motion. We understand what's natural, what's not natural. And then we can reverse engineer that to put a hurt on Joe Jackwagon, right? So the hips, right? The hips, just like the shoulders, are ball and socket joints. Okay. So the joint that attaches to the torso, doesn't matter if it's shoulder or hip, is a ball and socket joint. What that means is there's a cup that's formed. In the case of the shoulders, it's the scapula and these clavicles that come in here, right? There's nothing holding things in place at the front other than a couple of bands, right? These bands that cross over, and that's what you're destroying when you do things like onikudaki, mushadori, those kind of things, musodori, right? But there's a cup, right? In the case of the hips, it's the back wall, the iliac crest, the wall of the pelvic assembly, right? So you got this, and then you have this big old knob at the end of a bone. In the arm, it's the humerus, right? It's a big old knob up here. And in the leg, it's the femur, and it lays in here, okay? So a ball and socket joint moves this way, right? It can roll, right? We can swing our leg around in a circle kind of thing, right? It can roll, it can lift, it can lower, but it lifts and lowers on an arc. See it? It can move laterally this way. It can rotate out in front. Okay, that kind of thing. That's the nature of it, right? It's kind of the middle joint when it comes to strength. Okay, the more range of motion a joint has, the less actual strength that joint has. Right, hinge joints, knees, ankles, finger joints, those kind of things are stronger because there's less of a range of motion. Okay, so hips are ball and socket joints. Knees, I already said it, right? Knees and elbows by extension, right, are hinge joints, right? Just like the hinges on the doors in your house, unless you have sliding doors or revolving doors, right? They're hinge joints, right? So they have a very, very limited range of motion. They hinge open, they hinge close, okay? So if your knees and elbows are doing this, probably not a good sign, right? About the connective tissue that holds them in place so that this is what you get, okay? So while it can look like knees and elbows are doing things like, well, my elbow can roll in a circle. No, it can't. Your shoulder joint's doing the work. Your elbow's doing nothing because this isn't moving, right? Okay. If I'm moving my elbow around, it's moving up here to do this, but the arm or leg only ever opens or closes. That's it, right? And then the ankle joint, right? One of the weakest joints in your body, just like your wrist, right? Ankles are universal joints. Okay. What that means is that there's a whole bunch of little bitty bones. There's like 32 of them, something like that, just in the wrist, right? These little bones and things are positioned, right? So you can get a wide range of motion, right? Okay, it can turn this way, it can whatever, right? Okay, same thing. You can rotate your ankles around, you can flip them this way. Sometimes you can do movement that looks like it belongs to a ball and socket joint. Sometimes you're doing a movement that looks like it belongs to a hinge joint, but it's not. It's all over the place, right? Okay, so that makes them weaker. It makes things great for us human beings because we're able to do more fine-tuned movement, okay? But we trade off strength for range of motion, okay? So, but it's the same. If this class was on attacking the arms and looking at mushadori, onikudaki, whatever, the gyakute, all that kind of stuff, right? Everything would be the same. But we're looking down here, okay? So once we get through like understanding how to misalign things, right? Striking things to knock them out of place and all that, then a really cool exercise, right, is because I now understand hips on the low body are shoulders in the upper body. Knees in the low body are elbows in the upper body. Ankles in the low body are wrists in the upper body. Does that mean that all the joint locks and holds that we can do to the wrist, we can do to the ankles? Yes. To the elbows, we can do to the knees? Yes. To the shoulders, we can do the hips? Yes. Which means you can do mushadori, onikudaki, omotegyaku, and all that to the legs. You can do them with your arms. Watch MMA and jiu-jitsu guys. Okay. This past weekend, we had our annual fall camp going on, and one of my students who cross trains, he's done this, and he's done a bunch of jiu-jitsu things. He did a breakout session so people could understand this stuff, right? So he kept referring to these things, and students were like, "Wow, that's uragyaku, that's whatever," right? Because we're doing the same thing. So you can attack the legs with your arms, right? Do those manipulations, right? You have to be in a better position because the leg muscles and the structure tends to be bigger and stronger than the arm, right? So having really good leverage and understanding where you're supposed to be on that point is really, really important, right? But you can also do those same things to the legs with your legs. And then by extension, we can do mushadori and onikodaki and all that kind of stuff to their arms with our legs. Okay? No, you're not going to stand on your head. This is where ninjutsu ground fighting comes in. Okay? So anyway, right? To understand balance breaking and what you're getting when you're attacking the legs, other than just striking, right? If you've ever watched an MMA match, right? And, you got these guys throwing legs, right? Like these lateral shin kicks at their partner's knees, right? Or thighs or whatever, right? They're hoping for what? Give them a Charlie horse, get them to knock down. I have yet to see anyone get dropped with one of these lateral shin kicks. Now, full transparency, I don't waste my time or spend a lot of my time watching these things. I watch them for scientific purposes, not to cheer on a fighter. I do it for scientific work, right? So, but I have seen people with poor joints or poor nutrient intake, calcium density, and things like that, strike a strong leg with a shin and snap both the tibia and fibia, right, on that much stronger leg, right? So to do this correctly, we need to understand what we're doing, where we're going, right? If you have some of the pressure point lists, Kotoryu, Tagagi, Yoshin, that kind of thing, right? Then, you would know that on the side of the lower leg, right about there, right? There's a point that you can use the hell are they? A toe stab, right? To that point right there, cause this burning, right? Because when you hit it, the body moves 180 degrees from danger, right? Or from damage. So if I hit that point, right, what's going to happen? Well, the joints don't move that way, but I'm still getting 180 degree charge from the body because muscles will fire to do that. So when I do that and the lower leg moves because of that pain, what ends up happening? Well, the bottom of the foot rocks and the person ends up over their arch instead of the legs being in proper alignment. So I bump this thing, it hurts, get this flinch response, and now not only is the foot, ankle out of position, but the knee's out of position, and the counter torquing on the leg makes the hip lock up in the opposite direction, right? So if this moves this way, this locks up on the inner or on the outer hinge instead, right? So what that kind of thing does is locks the person in place. So that kind of attack doesn't move. It moves the legs in place, but for a half second, he can't move to avoid the punch or the, whatever that you're going to do to him. Okay. So understanding the karmic effect of these things is the important thing, right? But the way I'm giving this to you now, I guess I should probably just explain this guy up here, right? We'll move it in a little bit closer, right? See if you can get this. Is that going to work? That is going to work. Look at that. All right. So this weird spaceship looking kind of thing up here is top down. Okay. Top down. So head, nose, ears, shoulders, those are feet, not breasts. Okay. So correct alignment, straight down on the body. This way, this is what should be happening. I don't know why I gave him a big old freaking swollen shoulder over here. Doesn't really matter, right? If the head is forward, back of the head is going to be more in line here, right? All kinds of weird kind of stuff going on. Okay. So what we're doing, and this is a big thing in the Kukishinden school, okay? Big thing in the Kukishinden school, where your strikes and your setup get his shoulders, right? So that would explain this one right here, okay? So if the ears, shoulders, and feet, or hips and feet, right, were lines, we would have ears, shoulders, hips, feet, right? Feet are going to stick out. They're stacked, okay? What the Kukishinden school does is get the ears off the shoulders are off the hips, right? And the hips are off the line of the feet, right? And then now that that's torqued and locked, you come diagonally down through it to break the structure. Okay. Of course, there's other ways that they operate too. You take the bottom out and it collapses and all that, right? But you're getting, instead of, let me see if I can back up here far enough, right? Ears, shoulders, shoulders, hips, hips, feet, right? So what we're doing is causing things to be in a weird way, right? So the seniors in our school will help juniors, and sometimes somebody's done something like they've helped somebody move or whatever, and they'll come into class, or somebody, they go to school, they're in high school, college, whatever, and they come in and they've been carrying their backpack, right, on one shoulder, or the weight's not properly centered or whatever, right? And they'll come in, and instead of being set up like this, they'll be like this, okay? And the brain can't tell because the brain has been feeling that all day long. So now Broca's region just filters that out. But that's going to affect, right, movement, okay? Or they've got some, kind of turned kind of thing going on, right? Or one's really sunk in there, whatever, right? Okay. And so that's why it's important to do mirror work, or it's important to do, you can walk up to a mirror, close your eyes, right? Turn to face the mirror, and then kind of shake things out and relax, and then open your eyes. And what you get is the way your body has settled, right? You're not, if you walk up to the mirror first, and ego needs everything to look right so that it can get on with the other cool lessons instead of fixing the damn problem, right? What ego will do is, on the way up to the mirror, you'll just very subtly be fixing these things, but you haven't really fixed it. What you did is fired other muscles to make it straight. But as soon as you relax that muscle you're using, it goes back to where it was anyway, because it's a system of muscle. It's a system of connective tissue that's farther away from the point that's being affected, or that where you can see the effect, right? Okay. So anyway, so the way this was introduced to me is we looked at us first, right? Proper full body alignment, ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, hips over feet. And then we looked at, the lesson was what keeps us standing as a human being is an alignment between the hips, the knees, and the ankles, right? The better that is, not only the better our balance, but the easier it is to move, right? And the sign of really, really, really good posture and free movement is the arm swing diminishes less and less and less, right? You don't have to have arm swing just because you're a human being, okay? Arm swing is what the body does to counter this uneven walking, right? This transitioning of the weight, this lobbing kind of along, right? So the bigger the arm swing, the more the lumbering type movement, okay? The more fine and correct the movement, the less the arm swing. And then what you'll find out in public is you'll have to fake arm swing, or people will stare at you because it looks like there's something off, but they can't put their finger on it. Okay. So we learned this first. And then when it came to balance breaking, just reverse engineer, right? So the trick in self-defense, or just in moving through the world or whatever, is we want to keep the body in the correct places, right? Open joints, range of motion, closed joints for strength, that kind of thing, right? And we want to keep him out of those positions so his body is just naturally weaker, right? I don't have to force anything else to happen. I just focus on the key pieces, right, that make us strong or weak, that provide for balance or don't, right? I stay in the strong position, force him to operate from weaker positions. And if he came at it with habit patterns, whether it's punching, walking, whatever, that already cripples him, I'm not going to tell him, but I am going to pay attention and I'm going to use it. Okay. So anyway, that's what we have. If you want to take a look at more physical stuff or whatever, right? Join us on Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. What's that? 3 p.m. Pacific. You'll have to make adjustments for every other place in the world, right? So you can get some physical, the body actually doing things in fight context, right? We're going to do that on Friday. And again, for those of you who keep joining in on the Friday virtual classes and just wanted a consistent kind of program to go to, chop off everything, the Friday virtual training thing there after.com, and tag on Ninpo-Masterclass. And I got a video there that kind of explains the program and whatnot. And if you want to do it, great. If not, no harm, no foul. Just keep doing what you're doing. I'm just trying to get this stuff out so that while you're binge watching YouTube self-defense videos or whatever, you can put things into a better context instead of, we're going to collect martial arts techniques as a substitute for stamp collecting or rock collecting or booger collecting or whatever it is that people do, right? Okay, that's it. You know the next steps. I gave you several of them, right? Get to it, make things better for yourself. And my goal is always not to tell you what to do, but to speed up the result for you, right? If I can help you get from point A to point Z faster than I got there, that's the name of the game, right? I'm not looking for clones, not looking for disciples. I'm looking to take this stuff and everything from lessons that I was formally introduced to all the extra work I've done to understand, right? The science, the anatomy, the physiology, why it works, right? And if I can give you shortcuts so that you can get there faster, that's my plan. All right. So hopefully this was valuable. If not, you can always post a comment. Either way, just keep it clean and keep it classy. All right. And don't post anything that you would go ahead and delete later once I came back at you with logic. Right. That seems to be the name of the game so far. People post crap and then I point out where they missed a couple of things or whatever. And then instead of having open dialogue and that kind of thing, they just delete their comment. So save us both some time. Anyway, that's it. That's all I have. I will see everyone again, if not before. Hopefully I'll see you in training on Friday. If not, I will see you next week for our next episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Be careful. Train hard. See you next time.